Hey everyone, George here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a species profile on a fish that I have never had before, but I'm excited to put into this community tank right here, and that is the golden Ram Cichlid from South America. They're a dwarf species, much like the electric blue ram or German blue, and I really wanted to talk about this fish because they're a really exciting asset to my community tank here, and I wanted to do a little bit of a profile on them because I've been doing a lot of research on them before I purchased them. Wanted to add a little color to my tank, and as you can see, these guys are the absolute perfect species to do a little bit of that. So stay with me today. Let's talk about this species and get to know these great little beautiful fish, and see if there's something that you want to add to your tank. Let's get to that. Hey everyone, George here. Welcome back to the Art of Water. Today we're going to talk about the German rams, or otherwise known as South American Ram Cichlids. This particular breed that I'm having in the tank here are golden dwarf rams, and I introduced these a couple of days ago, and they're doing really great. Now, some of the things that you might want to know about this species as we go through this profile is that the species is really not really found much in the stores as a wild species any longer. They are tank bred for the most part. The ones that I have here are certainly tank bred, and so therefore they're a little bit more hardy than some of the ones. Now, as most of us know who have dealt with rams in the past, know that they do not travel well sometimes. So in other words, they don't show up at your store in the best of shape. Now, these guys are very peaceful fish in the cichlid family. They do really well with other schooling fish. They don't have any problems with that particular issue. You do sometimes get an aggressive male and female pair that will be very territorial because of the breeding process. But other than that, you will not find that these cichlids are aggressive like the African cichlid can be. Now, these of course are South American in nature, so they basically are a little bit more interested in a tank that is more planted and does have a lower light environment. As you can see, this does. We do have some floating plants at the top here that kind of keep the light down, but at the same time giving us an opportunity to grow the plants in the tank. Now, they like hiding places. They like to have wide open spaces as well. So this makes it a little bit more complicated to get the tank the way you want it to be. But if you do this right, you can have a setup very much like what I have here, and these fish will do very well in that environment. Now, these fish can be susceptible to a couple of different diseases, and that is some bacterial diseases and also ick. Now, I don't think that you're going to see this much with a tank-bred species of this particular fish, but you can see this in the wild ones that come in. Sometimes in the German blues, you can see this, and the Bolivian dwarf cichlid also can have this problem if they're purchased in the wild. Now, as I said, most of these cichlids are tank bred these days. They're not generally found with these kinds of issues because they are not traveling. They're tank bred, as I said, so they're very familiar with living in this particular environment, and so therefore they do better. Now, the other thing that you want to know about this fish is their eating habits. They can be a little bit picky about eating, and what I mean by that is not the kinds of food, but getting them to eat. If they're tank raised, generally you're going to find that they do pretty well with eating, but they are pickers. They are bottom feeders. They like to go along the dirt and sort of grub up anything that's fallen off. So you want to try to put as much algae tabs with protein and that sort of thing in there that they can pick at. This is good for them. As you notice, they go along the rocks and they do pick at things, just trying to kind of get anything that they can that's a source of protein. You'll see that they go along and they skim off much of the mosses and things like that, which is really good because they're very good at cleaning up the bottom of your tank. They will eat some plants if you're not careful. If the plants are not a plant that's going to be a hardy plant in your tank, if they see that that plant is susceptible, then they will eat off from it, and this can cause problems for certain plants. But if you're careful and know what you're doing with your planting of your tank, such as we have done here, you're really not going to have any problems whatsoever. I think that you're going to find that these fish are going to adapt really well. Now, we got back to talking about breeding pairs. It's very important to understand that if you have a breeding pair, they should not be a community fish. You should have a tank that's a minimum of 20 gallons for a breeding pair. If you have a larger tank, you can put more than one pair in there and they will do just fine. Now, this is a breeding pair that I have here, and there are lots of hiding places in there. Like I said, they can be very defensive towards their territory, and they do like to have places where they can spawn and raise their young. So it's very important that if you're going to breed these fish, that you supply them with the right conditions to do that. Otherwise, they will not be able to defend their territory very well, and there could be problems in your tank. So if you're planning on breeding, I guess the best thing to say is to try to use it as an opportunity to make a species-only tank for these guys, and make it a tank that you will be strictly using for breeding this particular fish. Now, one of the other things that we need to talk about regarding this fish is how to really decide whether they're male or female. Now, the males will have a more pointed back fin, and the females will have a definite red underbelly on them. Now, it's a very definite spot. It's not something that you don't see. It does take a few days for these fish to color up in the tank, but when they do, they will do very, their coloration will be very good, and you will be able to spot and figure out which ones are the males and the females in the tank. Now, it is one of those things where you have to really think about what you're doing when you put these in the tank, because, as I said, they are very, very good with other fish, but they can be picked on themselves. There are schooling fish out there that can sometimes create a problem of nipping at fins because of the colorfulness or the largeness of the fin. So be careful of that and make sure that you know what kinds of fish. They do really well with rummy nose tetras, cardinal tetras, some of the Raspora family. Any kind of schooling fish is going to be really good for these guys, and that's pretty much what you see in this particular tank here. So like I said, if you're going to raise these and keep them in a community tank, you want to make sure that you have schooling fish only and not different kinds. And I would not recommend mixing the ram breeds. I would be very careful about mixing cichlid rams in the dwarf category from South America. They can have problems with each other, so I would do one species or another and sort of leave it at that if you can. One of the best ways to make sure that you're not going to have this issue is to get a couple of these and just leave it at that. Don't get more than a couple. They're a great asset to any community tank. They're very beautiful fish. They have lots of coloration in them that really defines them as a fish that is up there with some of the most beautiful out there. Now, these are not fish that we have always considered to be okay with schooling fish and other types of fish, but as you can see, these guys get along really well. No one's picking on them. They're not picking on anyone. Everyone seems to be getting along great. They just sort of cruise the tank nonchalantly, doing their thing, and they're very, very happy fish in that sense. So anyways, that's my profile on this species. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, I would appreciate it if you would leave some comments and get back to me on this. These are a newer fish to me. I did study up on them a lot before I got them, but because they're a newer fish to me, I wanted to make sure that I did a species profile on them and gave you some good information about what you might do before you think about adding these to your tank. Again, I would hope that you would hit the like, the subscribe, and also make some comments, and use that bell at the top there, and that will give you an indication as to the next time I have a video out. Anyways, this is George with The Art of Water. Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.